quietly, don't you? Listening to people's voices, not only with your ears, but with your entire nervous system. You walk into a room and sense a tremor in the atmosphere. You call it intuition. You call it love. But what if I told you that much of what you call love is not love at all? It is fear in ceremonial robes. And the terrifying part is this fear wears the fragrance of sacrifice, the rhythm of belonging, and the illusion of divinity. It mimics love so well that even the most perceptive among you cannot discern the lie until it has consumed you. You are not weak for feeling, you are not broken for sensing, but I must offer a deeper truth that may shake you from your romantic fantasies. Empathy, when it is untethered from consciousness, becomes a narcotic. You absorb the suffering of others, not out of compassion, but because somewhere in your unconscious there lives a shadow belief. If I don't absorb it, they will abandon me. If I don't carry it, I don't deserve connection. This is not empathy. This is survival wrapped in affection. The archetype of the wounded healer lives in you, but so does the archetype of the martyr, who confuses his own erasure for holiness. When the boundaries of self are not known, the empath becomes prey to an ancient psychic delusion that to love is to dissolve, to merge, to vanish. In that unconscious agreement, fear takes the throne, and you will call it love. You may ask, but how can fear look like love? Because fear is clever. Fear is an imitator. It wears many masks. One of its favorite disguises is caretaking. If I care for you enough, you will stay. If I give enough, I will matter. If I sacrifice enough, I will finally earn your love. But behind these unconscious bargains lies an unspoken terror. I am not enough as I am. I must disappear to be loved. We must journey together into the underworld of this illusion, not as tourists, but as alchemists. For transformation does not come through escape, but through confrontation. Empaths are not victims of others. They are victims of their own patterns, inherited from generations of emotional chaos. A child raised in a home where love is withheld, or where parental moods dominate the air like volatile spirits, learns early, I must anticipate emotions. I must keep the peace. I must feel everything so I can survive. And so the gift of sensitivity is not born from spiritual enlightenment, it is born from trauma adaptation. A trauma that became a talent that became an identity, and in that identity, the empath loses their center. But let me take you further. The unconscious does not speak in words, it speaks in symbols, in dreams, in body tensions, in irrational reactions. So if you dream of drowning, of shapeshifters, of houses with infinite rooms, you must not dismiss these. They are your inner world screaming for integration. They are the shadow whispering. You don't know where you end and others begin. You cannot claim to love if you do not first possess a self to offer. What empaths call love is often a pattern rooted in the archetypal realm. They are unconsciously possessed by the anima or animus projections, projecting their own unlived selves onto others, believing that salvation will come if they can heal the other person. And thus begins the most seductive lie. If I can love them out of their pain, they will finally see me. They will finally choose me. But again, this is not love. It is control in disguise. It is a fear of abandonment dressed as unconditional care. The empath becomes a mirror for the wounded partner, but not out of wholeness, out of desperation to be reflected back as worthy. And so the pattern repeats. The empath is drawn to the narcissist, the addict, the emotionally unavailable, not because they are foolish, but because on a deep unconscious level, these figures represent the unresolved parental imago. They represent the original wound, the place where love and fear first collapsed into one indistinguishable experience. They are trying to master by repetition what was once uncontrollable, but the soul does not evolve through repetition. It evolves through rupture. So I ask you now, when was the first time you confused fear for love? Go back, feel the moment. It may be a mother who wept when you asserted yourself, a father who disappeared when you expressed pain, a friend who only stayed when you had no needs of your own. That is where the spell was cast. That is where the script began. And because the psyche is circular, not linear, you repeat the story again and again until you awaken. Let me reveal something else. There is a collective delusion moving through modern culture like a psychic plague. It tells you that empathy is always good, that sensitivity is spiritual, that boundaries are cold. But I say this to you, without boundaries, empathy becomes self-harm. Without consciousness, sensitivity becomes possession. And without individuation, love becomes bondage. You must not just feel for others, you must know yourself within the feeling. Otherwise, you are not being empathetic. You are being invaded. I have worked with dreamers, mystics, sholars, and madmen. I have seen how the unconscious will sacrifice anything to preserve the delusion that love is self-abandonment. It will even manifest illness. Yes, the body becomes the last canvas for the unresolved psyche. The empaths who cannot say no will find the body doing it for them. Fatigue, panic, migraines, mysterious ailments. This is not weakness. This is the soul's final protest, but few. Listen. So now I must speak to your unconscious directly, not to flatter, but to liberate. You are not here to rescue the world. You are here to reclaim the self, to know where your soul ends and the soul of another begins, to love with presence, not punish, to give with fullness, not fear, and to finally sever the chain that says love equals loss of self. The most radical act an empath can take is to individuate, that is, to become a whole and autonomous psyche, not split between rescuing others and rejecting oneself. Individuation is the path of the sacred middle, not merging, not isolation, but integration. You cannot heal others by disappearing. You cannot call it divine when it comes from terror. And yet, you can become the vessel for true love, not the reactive, chaotic, trauma-informed love that burns out and cries, why did they leave? But the steady, warm, rooted love that holds without swallowing, that feels without fusing, that knows I am me. You, are you? We can meet here, and that is the real alchemy. So much of what passes for compassion is an unconscious attempt to avoid annihilation. Yes, I will say it again, you love, because you are afraid that if you are not needed, you will be forgotten. Afraid that if you are not useful, you will be abandoned. Afraid that if you do not feel the pain of another, no one will ever feel yours. This is not empathy. It is a cry for recognition disguised as virtue. And until you expose this hidden cry to the light of awareness, you will continue to enter relationships as a phantom, half present, half missing, fully entangled. You will continue to call fear sensitivity and trauma intuition, and you will wear your exhaustion as a badge of spiritual honor. But I tell you, this true love does not cost your soul. You were never meant to leak yourself into others until you vanish. You were meant to witness, to discern, to offer love without the need to be consumed by it. That is the task of the mature empath, the integrated soul who no longer fears separateness. Why is it so hard for you to accept boundaries? Because somewhere in your psychic lineage, the boundary was a source of punishment. The child who said no was met with rage. The adolescent who withdrew was accused of betrayal. The adult who named their needs was shamed as selfish. And so your nervous system has learned to equate selfhood with danger. You would rather collapse into others than risk being alone. But individuation is the path of sacred solitude, not loneliness, solitude. A state in which you become intimate with your own interior world, no longer defined by the emotional weather of those around you. A state in which you can witness another's pain and say, this is not mine to carry, and feel no guilt in the release. Let me tell you a story. A woman came to me once in her 40s. She had been in a string of relationships where she played the savior, the therapist, the mother. She spoke in soft tones, wore the mask of serenity, and radiated exhaustion like incense. They always leave, she said, I give them everything. And they always leave. When I asked her what she wanted, she looked at me with the eyes of a forgotten child and whispered, to be chosen. You see, she did not love those men. She loved the idea that if she could fix them, she would finally be worthy. She was not giving love. She was bargaining with ghosts. Her lovers were not people. They were projections of the wounded father who never looked at her long enough to see her pain. She was not living in the present. She was trapped in the archetypal realm. Her love was not conscious. It was compulsive. This is what I mean by collective delusion. When masses of people confuse their survival patterns for moral high ground, when the martyr complex is celebrated, when overgiving is rewarded, when being emotionally porous is praised as noble. But nobility without consciousness is still slavery, and the collective shadow grows fatter. Modern culture praises the empath without asking, what wounds made you this way? It calls sensitivity a superpower without investigating whether the superpower was born in terror. It glamorizes emotional absorption as spiritual. But the truly spiritual path is not one of self-erasure. It is one of self-revelation. You must descend into your dreamscape, into the symbols that repeat, into the serpents. the floods, the dark corridors, for there you will find the truth that much of your empathy was constructed in the fires of abandonment, that your ability to feel another's pain was once the only way you could stay connected, that your gift was born in bondage, but now you are an adult, and the unconscious does not care about your age. It only cares about what is unfinished. And what is unfinished will be projected onto lovers, onto friends, onto the world. You will find yourself addicted to fixing, and that addiction is more potent than any drug because it provides identity. I am the healer. I am the one who stays. I am the one who understands. But underneath that identity is a fragile truth you don't want to face. You are terrified that if you stopped rescuing, no one would choose you, just as you are. And that is the edge, the terrifying, sacred edge of transformation. When you stop rescuing, who are you? When you stop absorbing, what remains? When you stop merging, do you still exist? Yes. And it is then, only then, that love becomes possible. Because only when the self is whole can it meet another in freedom, not fantasy. The lover who loves out of fear is not loving. They are surviving, but the lover who has touched their own darkness and returned to the light with wholeness, they can love without needing to vanish. They can say, I see your pain, but I no longer need it to recognize my value. They can say, I feel with you, but I do not collapse with you. They can say, I love you, but I am not your mirror, your mother, your savior. I am myself, and this is the great fear of the empath, that if they do not become what others need, they will no longer be loved. But that is precisely how the lie sustains itself. Do you not see? True love is not conditional on your usefulness. It does not require your contortion. It does not demand your silence. It asks only for your presence, your real presence, not the mask, not the persona, but you. And perhaps that is why so few experience real love, because so few know who they are outside of the persona. They perform. You must excavate, you must undo the performance. You must walk away from the addictive pull of being needed. That is not love, that is servitude. Let us pause here, not in silence, but in initiation. Feel what is arising, not just in the mind, but in the body, the tightness in the chest, the ache in the throat. These are not just physical symptoms. They are psychic artifacts. Your body remembers what the conscious mind denies. It has been carrying the burden of false love for decades. And it is time to put it down. Are you ready to see love for what it truly is? Not a transaction, not a mirror, not an anesthesia, but a sacred act of freedom? If so, we must continue. I do not ask you to reject your empathy. That would be a betrayal of the soul's architecture. No, I ask you to redeem it, to lift it from the underworld of unconscious survival and place it in the temple of conscious awareness, to no longer bleed for love, but to burn with clarity. Empathy, when reclaimed from fear, is not a soft, dissolving thing. It is precise. It is anchored It does not drown, it stands in the storm and knows it is not the vessel. It sees the chaos of another, and it holds not as a sponge, but as a lighthouse. It radiates, not to be needed, but to be true. You must know this. You cannot love from fear and expect it to become peace. You cannot pour from depletion and call it generosity. And you cannot become whole by fragmenting yourself for the comfort of another. But to break the pattern, you must be willing to grieve the years you spent abandoning yourself in the name of love, to grieve the relationships you built on the sand of emotional fusion, to grieve the identity you constructed as the one who always understands, and perhaps most of all, to grieve the truth that the person you kept rescuing was never going to choose you. Not because you are unworthy, but because you were not being you. You were being an archetype. You were being the mirror, the mother, the sacrifice. But the soul does not want to play a role. The soul wants to be revealed. Let me share another symbol. In many dreams, the empath appears as a vessel overflowing, leaking at the edges. Water is a powerful dream image. It represents emotion, yes, but also unconscious content when the dreamer is submerged or drowning or carrying buckets of water that never seem to empty. We are being shown how their psyche has become overwhelmed by the emotional projections of others. The vessel was never meant to carry all the oceans of other people's pain. It was meant to contain, not to flood. And so I ask you, where are you leaking? Do you say yes when your body screams no? Do you shrink so another can feel safe? Do you stay silent to avoid the tremor of rejection? These are leaks, psychic leaks. And they will erode your sense of self until all that remains is a mask called empath, worn by a ghost who no longer remembers their own name. But underneath that mask is your soul. Your soul is not a doormat. Your soul is not a nursemaid. Your soul is not a sacrifice. Your soul is a sovereign flame. And when you claim it, when you declare with trembling voice and steady eyes, I am no longer available for false love, you will feel it a breaking, a death, a tearing away of old skin. And it will hurt because all rebirths do. But on the other side, there will be breath, there will be silence. There will be a space that was once filled with frantic doing, now open for simply being. You must stop believing that you must earn love. You must stop believing that your depth is a currency to purchase approval. And you must stop believing that to be chosen, you must become invisible. I know the voice in your head resists. It says, but if I don't help, who will? That is not compassion. That is codependence. It is the unconscious shadow of the savior complex, the belief that the pain of others is yours to solve. You must trust that others are sovereign too, that they have their own path, their own karma, their own inner healer. When you rescue them prematurely, you interfere with their transformation. You rob them of the fire that could forge their strength. You think you are loving them, but often you are saving them from a lesson they need to learn. This is the paradox. The more you overfunction, the more they underfunction. The more you feel for them, the less they learn to feel for themselves. And so what began as love becomes enablement, and what began as empathy becomes possession. True love does not entangle, it liberates. True empathy does not drown, it sees But to embody this form of love requires inner architecture, a spine of discernment, a soul that has sat in solitude long enough to know I am not what I give. I am what I am. Let us go deeper now into the ancestral realm, for the empathic wound is rarely singular. It is often inherited, passed down through maternal lines. A lineage of women who kept peace by keeping quiet, who loved by losing themselves, who equated sacrifice with worthiness. They did not know another way, but you do. You are here now, at the edge of the story. The cycle ends with you, or it repeats through you. You must name what they could not. You must draw the boundary. They never dare to. You must become the mother of your own psyche, the one who says, I see you, I will not abandon you, and I will not betray you by pretending that love requires your disappearance. The inner child in you has waited decades to hear this, and when you speak it not just with words, but with action, the healing begins. At first, you will feel guilty. You will feel selfish. That is how the system has programmed you. Guilt is not proof you're wrong. Guilt is proof you're breaking free. Do not confuse discomfort with disobedience. The psyche resists change, even change that leads to freedom. It is wired for repetition, but you are not a machine. You are a mystery. You are not here to repeat. You are here to reveal. So now I ask you to choose. Will you continue to call fear love? Or will you become brave enough to stand in your wholeness? Even if it costs you the false connections that depended on your fragmentation, do not answer too quickly. Let the question burn. Let it melt the illusions. Let it become the fire in which the old you dies. And the real you emerges flawed, radiant, alive. You thought you were loving them, but really, you were trying to keep from being abandoned. You thought you were saving them, but really, you were trying to save the child within you who was never seen. Now it is time for that child to come home, and for you to love without fear. The child who was unseen lives within you still, not as a memory, but as a presence. And until you turn toward that child with reverence, you will keep seeking in others what you refuse to give yourself: attention, safety, permission to exist. You say you love deeply. But let us ask, do you love yourself with the same devotion that you give away? Or have you only learned to survive by loving others first? This child, the origin of your empathy, was not born to rescue. They were born to be met. And when they were not, they learned to invert their pain into perception. They learned to feel everything around them, so they might be needed, because being needed was safer than being forgotten. And so you mistake resonance for destiny. You meet someone whose wound sings in harmony with your own and call it love. But what you call chemistry is often trauma, recognizing itself. You don't fall in love, you fall into pattern. And the pattern is ancient. The pattern says, if I carry your pain, you'll stay. If I become who you need, I'll be safe. If I disappear enough, maybe I'll finally be seen. This is the delusion. This is the spell, but even spells can be broken. You break the spell not by hardening, but By awakening, you don't have to become cold to stop burning. You simply have to become clear. Clarity is love that has passed through the fire of discernment. And discernment requires solitude. I will say what few dare to say. Your overconnection is a form of avoidance. You say yes to others to avoid facing the emptiness inside. You feel their sorrow, so you don't have to feel your own. You become indispensable because you fear being unwanted. This is not service. It is self-erasure, and you were not created to be erased. You were created to see and be seen, to feel and be felt, to love without disappearing. Let me speak now to your shadow. Yes, you, the one behind the smile, the one who watches your kindness with silent resentment, the one who secretly wonders, what about me, while your mouth says, it's okay. You are the one who holds the rage, the tiredness, the truth. You are not a villain. You are the protector, the guardian of boundaries unspoken. You are the pulse that says enough. You rise up when the persona collapses, and you are often banished too soon. But I say, welcome the shadow. Sit beside her. Ask what she needs. She will not destroy you. She will restore you. For only in honoring what you have denied can you become whole. You thought your empathy was divine. But divinity without wholeness is illusion. Your light means nothing if it's built on suppressed truth. Real love includes the no, the pause, the space between. Real empathy does not dissolve, it defines. You must now begin to ask the most sacred of questions. Where do I end and where do you begin? This question is the doorway to soul sovereignty. Not everything you feel is yours. Not every pain you sense is your responsibility. Not every story that enters your field belongs in your body. You must learn to return what is not yours gently, reverently, but without apology. And in that returning, you reclaim your power. Do not be surprised when some fall away. They were only drawn to the version of you that bled. Let them go. The ones who stay, the ones who emerge, will love the version of you who stands, who glows, who says, I no longer trade my worth for proximity. Let me tell you what happens when the empath reclaims their self. They stop being the mirror and become the flame. They stop absorbing chaos and begin emanating order. They stop apologizing for needing space and start breathing. They do not abandon their sensitivity. They honor it. They place it inside a strong container and say, this is sacred. Not everyone gets access, and from this place, this healed place, they can love more deeply, more truly, more fiercely than ever before. Because now they are not loving from lack. They are loving from overflow. Now their empathy is not a survival mechanism. It is a gift rooted in consciousness. No, their care is not a contract. It is an offering, born of freedom. And now, finally, the inner child can rest, not because the world has changed, but because you have stopped asking others to heal what you will no longer abandon. Because you have said, I see you, I will not trade you for approval ever again. And in that moment, the self is reborn. Let the delusion die. Let the identity of the boundless empath melt. Let the lie that says you must suffer to matter be buried with dignity. It served you, once, but you are no longer that child. You are no longer the rescuer. You are no longer the forgotten one. You are the one who remembers. And now you walk not into other people's pain to be chosen, but into your own truth to be free. And that is what I call love.